government employers around the state of Utah, I have found that not everyone even knows that there's a new I-9 form out there that goes into effect this month. And if you don't know, then obviously the federal government is just not going to care. They're just going to let you write off with that, because ignorance is always an excuse to every law. So if you don't know that there's a new I-9 that takes a master's degree to fill out, and you're in HR, and you have a person comes in this month, and you fill out, you do E-Verify, obviously we're doing E-Verify, and then you do the old I-9 forms, and obviously you keep it. Don't we always keep our I-9s? Because the federal government loves for us to do all this work, and then we keep it, on the chance that they may someday come by and ask for it. And if the Department of Labor sometimes, and some of you had an opportunity to deal with the Department of Labor on an audit, we talked about this several years ago. If you've ever had the opportunity to work with the Department of Labor on an audit, it is so fun to do. Yeah, I mean, you just really want to do it the very next year if you possibly can. Because they don't just come in and look at the one thing that they, like this. If they find that you don't have the new I-9 and it's not filled out, and you were not present when it was filled out, and you didn't help the person that was filling it out fill it out, and if there's any problems with the I-9 when you are done, they're going to do an audit of your HR or your county that is going to be everything. And they're going to spend several days with you. And when you're done, you'll be really lucky, because that's what, any auditors here? Yeah, sorry. You see the Geico commercials? Auditors don't feel good unless they can find exceptions to something. So if you have an external auditor come in, have you ever had an external auditor come in and spend several days with you and say, I didn't find one thing, you guys are just perfect. They don't get paid for that. So the Department of Labor comes in, they're going to spend a week with you or more. And when they're done, you're going to wish they had never darkened your door. Speaking from personal experience. So make sure that if you don't have the new I-9s, you have the new I-9s. I'm finding that a lot of people do not. They don't understand how it works. The instructions with them. Go to the DOL website and get the instructions, and you can understand what you need to be doing in HR, because we are always the enforcers for this. All right, let's work through what we've done. I think, what does it say on the agenda? Legislative update? Okay. The Utah State Legislature met for 45 days. And obviously, as the state government, we're here to help local government. That's our main purpose. Because everything we do is to help you do your job. So for 45 days, we accomplished, we balanced the budget, we didn't raise any taxes. So there's your legislative update. Okay? And to be really honest with you, we didn't do too many things in employment law that would cost you or cause you too many problems. And I sometimes keep an eye on this a little bit, making sure that we don't really mess things up. Except with Senate Bill 190. That one's one I somehow didn't catch. So let me just talk to you. There's a couple of bills that I think you should be aware of. 193 is one, actually I sponsored House Bill 193. And it was done basically for the state employees, and it deals with the Affordable Care Act. And what it does is the Affordable Care Act, when it goes into effect, which has already started, includes a thing they have for benefits. You saw this morning when it talked about essential benefits. Well, if you talk essential benefits, and that affects, because of the state statute, it affects the Utah State retirement system on essential benefits and what they are required to do when they have, quote, essential benefits. So now the retirement kicks in. So what this bill does is exempt the URS from having to deal with the Affordable Care Act. There's a lot of other things in it that aren't, if you'd like to read, it's in the back. You're welcome to. It's a 10-page bill or more. And but all it basically does is exempt URS from having to define essential benefits as part of retirement and qualify employees for retirement just because of the Affordable Care Act. Any other things apply to state employees only. I don't think we have to worry about those, but sometimes they come down the pipe. The one I wanted to talk to you for just a few minutes today is we all live in a cyber society. and it's called the Internet Privacy Amendment Act, Internet Employment Privacy Act, House Bill 100. So we're going to run through this really quickly. It comes effective, what a perfect timing, on May 14th. So next week, you're going to be under the provision of what this law does to you. And I just want to give you a little heads up. Most of you understand the cyber workplace and what we're doing out there. And I'll give you a few examples as we move through this. But this law basically is a privacy law for your employees. And if you've been doing some things in the past as far as their accounts and their internet, you're going to have to stop, or you're going to have real reasons. Basically, it requests employees or applicants disclose usernames and passwords that allow access to personal internet accounts. So you cannot any longer, if an employee comes to you or an applicant comes to you and says, I'd like to have a job, and you ask them to fill out anything that might be in cyberspace, and you ask for the ability to search their records in cyberspace, they are not required to give you that information on personal accounts. Now, that didn't used to be a problem in my days. Most of the days that didn't be much of a problem, but it is now. As you can sometimes find a lot of background information on employees. In fact, background checks, a lot of them are done on personal websites and what they're doing in cyberspace out there. You can't take adverse actions. Everybody understands what adverse actions are? Adverse actions are anything you might do to the employee for an adverse action. I love these. Discharging a threat, we understand that. Otherwise, discriminating against an employee, any manner that affects their employment, including the compensation, terms of employment. These are where we get the real fun things. Location. What does it mean about location? What's location mean as an adverse impact? May not. It can be as little as moving their cubicle. I have several court sites where you'll see where they have moved a cubicle from one space to another space in the office, and they determined it was an adverse action because they were close to a person they liked, and we moved them in an area of the office that they were near people they didn't like. Sued us for adverse actions because of location, communities, promotions, or privileges. I love it when attorneys come because I like to have attorneys talk to us about what they do. I just love attorneys. Just got through a settlement in Weaver County with an employee. It was one of the best days I've ever spent in my life. Anyway, a personal internet account, it's an account that they have on their internet. So we know that, does anybody here not have a Facebook? Hey, cool. You know what my attorney told me in the state legislature? Don't have Facebook. Don't have a Twitter. And if you do something, do a website, you're welcome to do a website, and then you manage it. But don't do Facebook, because you never know where that information is going once it's on there. And your friends are your friends only so long, and then they become something else. It's amazing what has happened on Facebook. It does not include account created, maintained, used, or assessed by the employee for business-related communications or for business purpose of the employer. Now, sometimes we allow employees to use personal computers, their personal computers, for business-related things in the office. If it's their personal data, you cannot access it. If it's something that you've paid for to generate, such as a program, you can. Let me give you an instance. We have a situation we dealt with some time ago in Weaver County. We had an employee that was in one of our divisions that was using a program generated that the county had paid for and creating an access to that program from his personal computer so he could work with the program while he was out of the office at his home or other places that he might be. And he decided that it might be a good opportunity to do some other things with that program while he was outside the office. And lo and behold, it wasn't several weeks until he was using our programs to do private work on his own computer outside the office. He was saying that we did not have access to that because it was his private computer at his private home, and he was on his private internet service. We decided we did, and we investigated, and we actually took action because of it, and the action stood. What are the exceptions? You can't read, it also makes clear, however, that employees are not prohibited from requesting or requiring employees or employers. They're not requiring employees to disclose usernames and passwords needed only to gain access to their electronic communication supplies or paid for in whole or part by the employer. So here's the deal. You have cell phone policies. Sometimes you don't supply a cell phone, but sometimes you supply a stipend for a cell phone. Weaver County does. I have a cell phone, and of course, my cell phone's different, but they supply a stipend for cell phones. Do you have access to everything on that cell phone because you supply a stipend? Is it now part of your domain that you as an employer can have everything on that telephone? Yes or no? You wouldn't think so. But that's where the gray line comes in. Because that's when a judge or a third party might watch this happen, or a records committee, or someone else will look at the data on the phone and decide which is business related and which is private. That's fun, isn't it? To have someone else look at your cell phone to decide which is private and which is public. As legislators, I deal with this all the time. Every email I have that comes to my phone, whether I respond to it or not, is public information. Everyone can read my emails. That's why I'm very, very careful about what I say in emails. If I return an email, I usually don't. But if I do, I say something very generic, and then I call the person and talk to them personally rather than develop an email trail. Because if the state, or in this case, in your case, if the county owns, in whole or part, any part of that device, they can request and possibly receive all of the electronic communications, or much of them, supplied or on that telephone or computer device. So pay for it in whole or in part. A service provided by an employer obtained by virtue of the employee's employment relationship. If he's on a service that's provided by you, even though he has a separate account, if you're providing the service, that's such as Verizon, and you're on Verizon, you're paying Verizon, and he has a separate thing on there, a separate phone, the whole bit. If you're supplying that Verizon account with Verizon services, you have an opportunity, exceptions, that you can find that information. Disciplining or discharging the employee for transferring the employer's proprietary confidential information or financial data to a personal internet account without the employee's consent. You know, I talked to you a few minutes ago that in our county that we finally got to. This is how we got to it. We had information come to us, and we could verify, and there was reasonable cause to understand that this employee was using proprietary information of the county, developed with county resources, developed on county time, and paid for with county tax dollars. And they were using that proprietary information to do individual and private work that was benefiting the employee. That is the only way we broke into that and got that information. That employee no longer works for us in Weaver County. And he's probably maybe applied to some other county where he's found a wormhole into your system and is now working with it. For us, he's gone. So, exception of conducting an investigation requiring employees to cooperate in an investigation to ensure compliance with applicable laws or federal laws. You have an investigation into one of your employees. Every one of us have had this. That whether in any area of government, we've had this. You have an investigation where you have someone come to you with information that you have an employee that's accessing websites that are federally protected, or in some cases, as it's child pornography, or against the federal law. They have statutes and laws, things like this, to deal with these particular things. This allows you the ability to do those investigations with probable cause regardless of that usage. And in fact, you can actually, through your investigation, seek out passwords, court order passwords, as well as other information. And I'll give you an instance how that works. There is specific information about the activities on the employee's personal internet account. Okay, let me give you the scenario. You have an employee that at work is pretty tough most of the time. It's just a little weird, but aren't we all? Determined by who? I would like to know who's weird, please. Anyway, we have information that comes to us that this person belongs in and is active in gang-related activities. And on her Facebook, as well as other social media accounts, she has a lot of things that show her, pictures that show her in position or doing things that would be in violation of law. And also, obviously, in violation of a code of conduct for county employees. Now, our concern is, can we have access to that information? And if you have probable cause to think that that information is indeed in violation of law, you can access that information. Again, I like to involve an attorney in those particular things. Sometimes you might have to have a court order. Sometimes you have to show reasonable suspicion or or amount of evidence for probable cause. But you can. In this particular case, we knew that there was specific information about some unauthorized transfer of proprietary information, confidential information, and financial data. We found that through that, and we took action, and that employee is also no longer working for us. Restricting or prohibiting employees' access to certain websites while they are using electronic communications devices supplied or paid for in whole or part. Now, if someone's at work and they're accessing or they're surfing the web, and obviously I would never do this, or no one I know that has ever done this, where you sometimes find yourself for a few minutes and MSN.com comes up and you'd like to know the latest news in the world today. Me, except that I would never do this. So, as you are doing that, and sometimes some employees get carried away in the amount of time. That ought to be a theme that is watched in the office and supervisors are watching so they can at least curtail. I don't think you're going to fire an employee or to have disciplinary action against an employee for going to a website like MSN.com or something and looking at the news for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But if they are habitually on that all day long, then you want to be taking some disciplinary action for the fact that the outcomes of that. They're not doing their job. In one particular department we had someone that was doing this, and they said, we want to fire her for using the internet. Okay, she's on the internet. We want to fire her for going on the internet. I said, so are there any other employees in your office that ever use the internet? I don't know. Well, perhaps we better find out. And we looked for a couple of weeks, and it was rampant throughout the office. There are a lot of people using the internet on the office, so it's kind of tough to say you can't use a piece of county property to access the internet if everybody in the office is accessing the internet. So what we can say, I just saw that, somebody walked in, so we're going to finish up pretty quick, and you're going to be ready to start in about 10 minutes, aren't you?
2:30.
How about? I don't think you and I are communicating. The presenter before you walked in is thinking that you could start earlier. These people could go home sooner. Is that an opportunity?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Now we are communicating. So, I'll move through this quickly. You can monitor, viewing, accessing, or blocking electronic data stored on electronic communications devices. You can put filters in. You can block them from going several places. But you just can't intermittently fire someone because they went to the internet unless you have an internet policy that says no one does, and you find that no one does. I think you will find that a lot of people do. And it's just the society we live in. In fact, what you'll find is a lot of employees need to. There's a lot of times I will just turn my chair sideways, and the same might be going, but I'll turn sideways and I'll walk over and I'll hit something that has to do with employment law or some reasonable combination, because the federal government provides us a lot of websites that we can look at this. I spend a little bit of time on the DOL side. Those in my office do also. And we print things off. We spend time on the internet looking at a lot of these things. You want to make sure you're fairly careful on what you're doing with it, but you can put the filters in and you can screen. Is all the internet screening prohibited? This is a tough one. No. And it does make it clear that you're not prohibited or restricted from viewing, accessing, or using information about employees or an applicant can maintain without using a password or a username. How do you do that? You get crafty. You know, you've got someone that comes in and says something about an employee, and you obviously don't have the passwords or the username for some of those websites out there that they're using, but you may know a friend of that person that is listed as a friend that may have some information. And as long as that is freely given with consent of the person that has put it on, when you push that button to send, and it goes out, that picture goes out to all of your friends, all 1,400 of them. It's no longer private, which means that if one of their friends should happen to have the information, then you can have the information also. It's out there and it's public, in the public domain of information. So if you have concerns with that, make sure that it's in the public domain and you don't have to have. What happens if the violations occur? This is really a scary one. We started this out pretty simple. If there's a violation, then you can show, they can show or prove that you've actually done this and without and discriminated against them. We can award the employee damages in excess of $500. We set that at $500 to make it worth it. I cannot award the employee damages in excess of $500. $500 is worth it, but not usually. I mean, we're not going to go to court over $500 usually. I would think as we move along in this cyber world we live in and the internet that we now live in, that you'll see this number maybe change over the years. Okay, what now? Well, the new law it places restrictions on the employer's effort to obtain access. It does recognize the exceptions and the need that you have to do business. And it does also provide the employer and accounts and services provided by an employer and used for business purposes. Also in line with Utah's employer's current personnel policy, expressly allows the employees to monitor, review, access, block, all those things are now currently doing. If you don't have filters, I'm sure you all have filters on your content your employees are allowed to access. And if you monitor those things, I think we have a reasonable expectation to do that monitoring, but they also have a reasonable expectations for privacy in what they're doing. So I think we're just about where we did that. I would just like to caution you, I have HB 100 on the back table. I made 50 copies or whatever, but if you need more, you can contact me and I'll give you some of HB 100 stations there, and I just explained to you, you're welcome to take a copy off the back table. And also the I-9 form, if you haven't got that, you're welcome to take that too. It's important that we understand how the new world of the internet and the new world of cyber communication is happening around us. A decade ago, I wouldn't have been concerned with this as much as I am now. But I can tell you, if you're not up to date on your internet strategy or your cyber policies or your computer policies, you need to be. And also in your hiring and your practices and your training of employees. don't anticipate firing employees for something that you haven't at least informed them of and through policy, and at least made them aware through some type of training what they can and cannot do in that cyber world that is out there. Because it's only going to be getting worse. And we need to be ensuring compliance with our employees across the board. Questions? Do you have any questions? So good. Okay, well, I'm going to be
I have a question for you. So when you say you can, they can sue, is that just, they just go to the district court, do their thing
yeah,
in the state?
they'd actually have to file an action. You don't have to have an attorney, but they could get an attorney for $500. I'm not too sure you have too many attorneys that can say, yeah, let's jump on this right now. What's the penalty? $500?
Committed where they have to be pretty committed.
Yeah, very, very committed. But as I said, I think you'll see that number change as this becomes more prevalent over the next few years. Privacy is going to be a big deal in the cyber world. You cannot believe the attacks that most of the large businesses, large counties, large cities across the United States get every day on their computer systems. So this is going to be a big deal over the next few years, and we'll finally evolve into a really big deal. As 90% of all of your communications are paperless and we're do over the internet. So keep an eye on this. So is that it? All right. What's next on the agenda?